From rails to rockets, 800 days around the world. I'm going to see it for myself, a wonderful imaginary venture, and first time in the life. I have closed my eyes and venturing into a tour of the world, everything imaginary. This is a journey of the mind, body, and soul. 100-day pilgrimage across continents, oceans, cultures, and frontiers of science and technology. Author Shri
Rajeev Thatte.
Prologue. A journey begins. My name is
Rajeev Thatte.
and I'm a curious soul who never outgrew his childhood wonder. At 72 years old, most people would expect me to slow down, stay home, and read about the world in newspapers. But I've decided to do the opposite. I'm going to see it for myself, imaginary venture, first time in the life. I have closed my eyes and venturing into a tour of the world, everything imaginary. This is not a vacation. It is not a check-the-box tour or a luxury escape. This is a journey of the mind, body, and soul. 100-day pilgrimage across continents, oceans, cultures, and frontiers of science and technology. I want to witness the bustling towns of Europe, the silent snowfields of Scandinavia, the deserts of Africa, the tech corridors of Silicon Valley, the spiritual shrines of the East, and the innovation hubs like NASA, where dreams of tomorrow are being engineered today. I'm a man who has lived a full life, faced health challenges that brought me to the brink, donated a kidney to the woman I love, and emerged from it all not weaker, but stronger, kinder, more aware. Now, with a body that has seen pain and a spirit that has seen light, I feel ready to stretch my boundaries one last time. Not for survival, but for celebration. I've chosen to travel the world by all means possible, by road, air, train, and ship. Because I believe that how you travel shapes how you perceive the world. I want to feel the pulse of cities, the rhythm of rural life, the silence of mountain tops, and the hum of servers in AI labs. I will carry a backpack and a journal, a smartphone, and a heart full of questions. I want to meet people, talk to them, understand their hopes and fears. I want to see what unites us across borders and what divides us and why. I want to learn how machines are thinking and how humans are forgetting to. I want to listen to birdsong in the Amazon, street jazz in New Orleans, and robotic voices in Tokyo. Each day of this journey will be a story. Each place a lesson. Each encounter a mirror. This is not just a travelogue. This is a record of what it means to be human in the 21st century. So come with me. Let's begin one step, one story, one sunrise at a time.
Rajeev Thatte.
1st January 2030, Mumbai International Airport, Day 1. Mumbai. The first goodbye 1st January 2030, Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj International Airport. It was still dark when I left my home in Andheri. and the early morning mist hung low over the roads like a curtain reluctant to rise. The city hadn't fully woken up. Only the crows and the stray dogs seemed aware of my departure. The cab driver, a young fellow named Javed, kept the radio low as he drove, perhaps sensing that I was lost in my thoughts. As we passed Marine Drive, I rolled down the window for one last breath of that salty Mumbai air. A wave of emotions washed over me. Not sadness, not fear, but a strange mix of anticipation and nostalgia. This city had been my Karambhumi. I had worked, struggled, healed, and loved here. And now, at 67, I was about to leave it behind for 100 days. Why now? Why a world tour? Because time no longer waits for dreams that are too often postponed. After facing paralysis, cancer, epilepsy, and gifting a kidney to my beloved wife, I had already made peace with mortality. This tour wasn't about running away from age or chasing thrill. It was about witnessing life. I wanted to see the world, not just read about it. I wanted to feel the cold wind of the Alps, hear the buzz of drones in Tokyo, touch the sand in the Sahara, and look into the eyes of people whose lives had nothing to do with mine, and yet, perhaps, everything to do with being human. At the airport, I checked in for my first flight to Bangkok. Southeast Asia would be my first chapter. The Air India lady at the counter smiled politely. "Solo traveler?" she asked. "Yes," I said, "but not alone." She gave me a confused look, but I just smiled. In my heart, I carried my memories, my family, my friends, and perhaps even the spirits of those who didn't make it this far. And I carried a small diary gifted by my wife with the words "One Earth, Many Lives" embossed on the cover. As I sat at gate 16, waiting to board, I looked around. A young couple with backpacks, a group of elderly Gujarati on a group tour, a woman typing furiously on her tablet, and me, a senior citizen with a hunger not for food or comfort, but for discovery. Boarding was announced. I walked slowly, not from age, but from soaking in the moment. As I stepped onto the plane, I paused at the door. I closed my eyes and whispered, "Thank you, Mumbai. I'll return with stories." Then I walked in, took my window seat, and fastened my seatbelt. The sun had risen now, and as the plane climbed through golden clouds, I smiled. My journey had finally begun. Next stop, Bangkok, Thailand. The smile that teaches. Day 2, Bangkok. The smile that teaches. 2nd January 2030, Bangkok. Thailand. The first thing I noticed when I landed in Bangkok was not the sprawling Suvarnabhumi airport, nor the buzzing tuk-tuks waiting outside, but the smile of the immigration officer. Warm, calm, and disarmingly genuine. Not mechanical or forced, but the kind of smile that told me, "You're welcome here." Thailand calls itself the land of smiles. And on my first day, I began to understand why. After settling into a modest riverside hotel near the Chao Phraya River, I stepped out into the city. It was early afternoon. The humidity wrapped itself around me like a wet scarf, but I didn't mind. The streets were alive with color and energy. Floral garlands hanging from shop fronts, vendors steaming noodles in giant woks, monks in saffron robes walking barefoot with bowls of alms. I visited Wat Pho, home of the reclining Buddha. As I stood before the massive golden figure, 46 meters long, calm and serene, I felt something shift within me. Not awe, but peace. The kind of peace that comes not from grandness, but from humility. The quiet hush of tourists, the delicate aroma of incense, and the soft chants from nearby made me sit down and reflect. This journey wasn't just about geography. It was about learning, unlearning, relearning. Later, I boarded a small long-tail boat and drifted through the narrow canals of Thomburi, where wooden homes stood on stilts and life unfolded slowly. Children waved at me from rickety balconies. A woman in her 60s was tending to her orchard plants with tender care. These weren't scenes from a tourist brochure. They were slices of real life, resilient, ordinary, beautiful. In the evening, I visited a university where a young Thai researcher named Preecha was giving a public talk on AI for rural health outreach. Yes, in Bangkok, in a modest room above a street filled with food stalls and neon signs, a group of 20 people listened intently to how machine learning was helping diagnose diseases in villages far from hospitals. Technology, he said, should not replace wisdom. It should support it. That's why we focus on community learning, not just data input. I was moved. This was not Silicon Valley's version of AI. It was AI wrapped in kindness. Back at the hotel, I sat on the terrace with a bowl of mango sticky rice, watching the city shimmer in golden lights. I wrote in my journal, Bangkok teaches not by preaching, but by smiling. It whispers to the traveler, be kind, be still, and don't forget to learn. I realized that learning would be a recurring theme of this tour, learning from cities, people, temples, cafes, labs, and chance encounters. Tomorrow, I fly to Hanoi, Vietnam, a place shaped by history, haunted by war, and, I hope, healing through hope. But tonight, I close my eyes with gratitude for Bangkok, a city that taught me something without saying a single word. Day 3, Hanoi, where scars still sing. 3rd January 2030, Hanoi, Vietnam. The flight from Bangkok to Hanoi took less than 2 hours, but it felt like I had crossed a century. As I descended into the capital of Vietnam, the sky was overcast. The city greeted me not with the dazzle of Bangkok, but with a quiet, melancholic dignity. Narrow streets flanked by crumbling colonial buildings, the hum of scooters weaving like restless thoughts through the traffic, and the smell distinctly Vietnamese of coffee, rain, and memory. At first glance, Hanoi seems subdued. But as I wandered into the old quarter, I realized that beneath its modest exterior lives a soul shaped by struggle, survival, and song. Life moved briskly, vendors selling pho from roadside stalls, women in conical hats balancing bamboo poles of bananas and vegetables, children playing with kites between moss-covered walls. That afternoon, I visited the Hoa Lo Prison Museum, once infamously known as the Hanoi Hilton. The name is almost ironic. Inside, I saw the cold stone cells where Vietnamese revolutionaries were imprisoned by the French and later where American POWs were held during the Vietnam War. The air was thick, not just with age, but with sorrow. I paused in front of a rusted iron gate. My mind wandered to the war documentaries of my youth. The air raids, the resistance, the unyielding spirit. But here, standing in silence, I didn't feel like a spectator to history. I felt like a witness. What struck me most was how Vietnam doesn't hide its scars. It preserves them, honors them, and somehow grows from them. Later, I met a young guide named Ling who showed me around the Vietnamese Women's Museum. Through her gentle narration, I saw how women here weren't just victims of war, they were warriors, maids, poets, farmers, mothers, and peacemakers. She told me about her grandmother, who had walked barefoot for days during the war to reach safety, carrying to children and a pot of rice. She never blamed anyone, Ling said. She just sang lullabies and kept us strong. In the evening, I sat by Hon Kim Lake, watching elderly locals perform Thatte as soft music played from hidden speakers. Young couples posed for photos on the red wooden bridge leading to the NGOC Sun Temple. Lanterns swayed gently in the wind. The city, despite all its bruises, pulsed with life. I opened my journal. Hanoi does not shout. It does not weep. It sings, not in joy or sorrow, but in memory. And in its song, there is healing. That night, I couldn't sleep. The city's stories had found a place in my heart. Scars, I realized, don't fade, but they can teach you how to live more fully if you're willing to listen. Tomorrow, I take the train to Beijing, China, a journey of contrasts, ambition, and ancient echoes. But for now, Hanoi lingers in my soul, a city that taught me that even wounds can become wisdom. Day 4, Beijing. Between the Dragon's Breath 4th January 2030, Beijing, China. The train to Beijing from Hanoi was long and layered. Almost 30 hours of landscapes transforming from humid green paddies to dry winter plains. I watched the world blur through the window. Farmers tending to rice fields, distant hills veiled in mist, town after quiet town. Somewhere along the journey, I fell asleep to the gentle clatter of the wheels, my head resting against the glass. When I arrived at Beijing West Station, the cold bit through my jacket. It was a sharp, dry winter wind, one that wakes the soul. Beijing was everything I expected and everything I didn't. Towering skyscrapers with digital banners, flashing AI-generated poetry, stood beside narrow hutongs where old men played exainki, Chinese chess, and boiled dumplings steamed in bamboo baskets. The past and the future didn't clash here, they coexisted. My first stop was Tiananmen Square, a vast expanse of stone that had seen so much history and held so many unspoken stories. Soldiers marched with robotic precision. Tourists took selfies under Mao's portrait. Yet there was a quietness, a reverence in the air, as if the very stones beneath my feet were listening. I wandered into the forbidden city, where red walls whispered secrets of emperors long gone. The architecture was breathtaking, symmetrical, symbolic, timeless. But it wasn't just stone and tradition that impressed me. It was the meticulous restoration, the way QR codes allowed me to listen to stories in my own language, and how AI guides explained dynastic changes with holograms in some halls. Old met new here, not just in technology, but in spirit. In the afternoon, I visited Tsinghua University's Institute of Advanced AI, where a young researcher named Dr. Z introduced me to a project called Ethical Machines. Their goal? Teaching AI systems to make decisions that reflect not just logic but morality, a fusion of Confucian philosophy and machine learning. China doesn't just want fast machines, he said. We want wise ones. Ones that understand compassion, not just computation. That sentence stayed with me all day. By evening, I walked along the restored section of the Great Wall near Mutianyu. The sun was setting, painting the stones golden. Each step felt like walking through centuries. I stopped halfway to catch my breath and turned to look at the serpentine wall snaking over the hills. It was massive, enduring, and proud. But I wondered, was the wall just a barrier of defense? Or also a symbol of endurance, unity, and vision? Every nation builds walls, I wrote that night in my journal. But what matters is whether those walls become prisons or platforms to see beyond. Beijing was not a city of easy answers. It was a dragon, ancient, fire-breathing, yet strangely wise. You don't tame it, you observe it. And if you are lucky, you understand a part of its rhythm. Tomorrow, I fly to Kyoto, Japan, to find stillness in a land where technology wears a kimono and silence often speaks louder than sound. Day 5, Kyoto, the Whispering Bamboo, 5th January 2030. Kyoto. Japan. As the flight from Beijing descended over Kyoto, I saw a landscape dressed in winter's quiet grays, silver rooftops, rivers laced with morning mist, and pine trees standing in gentle meditation. The airport was a heaven of order, silence, and courtesy. It felt as if even time bowed politely here. Kyoto isn't a city that competes. It contemplates. And so did I, the moment I stepped into its rhythm. I took a short train ride to Arashiyama, where the bamboo grove awaited me. The path through the towering green stalks was silent except for the rustling of leaves, like the forest whispering truths in a language I almost understood. I stopped and closed my eyes. The vine swirled around me. In that moment, I felt weightless, like a leaf suspended in timeless breath. Later, I visited a Zen temple where a monk named Ryuji invited me to share tea. We sat on tatami mats overlooking a rock garden where raked gravel formed gentle waves around islands of moss-covered stone. Nature speaks, he said, but we must become still enough to hear it. He told me how in Japan, even machines are taught to respect silence. AI interfaces use minimal sounds, robots in elderly care homes pause before speaking, and digital assistants bow virtually before answering a query. Respect is embedded in every interaction. In the afternoon, I explored a local innovation hub called Kyoto Future Lab, a place where tradition meets tomorrow. There I met Yukiko, an engineer working on AI tools for preserving ancient calligraphy and handloom patterns. Modernity must serve memory, she said, not erase it. She showed me how algorithms were being trained to detect the subtle brushstrokes of aging artisans, helping younger generations learn what can't be put into words. By evening, I walked through Gion, Kyoto's historic geisha district. The narrow lanes glowed under paper lanterns. The soft shuffle of wooden sandals, the hush of passing kimonos, the low laughter from ochaya tea houses. It all felt like a fading poem, not gone, but gently drifting into twilight. That night in my journal, I wrote, Kyoto does not shout for attention. It waits. And when you listen, it gives you silence wrapped in gold. Before I slept, I stood on the balcony of my ryokan. The air was crisp, the sky deep blue. Somewhere in the distance, a temple bell rang. One long, deep sound, a reminder to be present, to be grateful. Tomorrow, I take the ferry to Busan, South Korea, crossing water again as the journey unfolds. But Kyoto will stay with me, like bamboo in the wind, quiet, rooted, and endlessly resilient. Day 6, Busan, Steel, Sea. And Seoul Dreams, 6th January 2030, Busan, South Korea. The ferry ride from Kyoto's port to Busan felt like a breath between two cultures, both steeped in history, yet galloping toward the future. The sea was calm, almost glass-like. As the Korean coastline appeared, wrapped in morning mist, I felt a quiet excitement. Korea had always intrigued me, not just for its tech savviness, but for its deep resilience. Busan greeted me with a sharp wind and the briny scent of the ocean. Unlike Kyoto's calm grace, Busan pulsed, with container ships unloading in rhythm, with cranes dancing across the skyline, and with buses whizzing through neon-lit avenues. The first place I visited was the Gamcheon Culture Village, a hillside labyrinth of color. Painted houses stacked like building blocks, murals blooming on every wall, children playing between art installations. Once a slum, now a symbol of community transformation. It wasn't perfect, but it was hopeful and alive with creativity. I climbed its steep alleys and spoke with an elderly artist named Mrs. Jai, who had lived through the Korean War and now taught children how to paint. Art heals what war leaves behind, she told me, handing me a brush. Even broken things can become beautiful. That afternoon, I was invited to Busan Techport, a sprawling innovation hub near the harbor. It was a world apart, robot dogs patrolling hallways, holographic presentations of urban planning, and teenage coders designing AI to predict typhoon impacts on fishing communities. A young developer named Minho showed me his project. A ship navigation system powered by AI that mimicked dolphins' echolocation to reduce maritime accidents. We don't want machines to replace us, he said. We want them to understand our world. His generation was building not just with steel and code, but with purpose. In the evening, I walked along Hendy Beach, where locals jogged along the shore and children built castles in the sand. I watched the sunset paint the sea in molten gold. A quiet hush settled over the city, as if even Busan paused to admire the moment. Street food vendors filled the promenade, and I couldn't resist a plate of hotteok, sweet pancakes filled with brown sugar and nuts. As I sat on a bench, a group of high schoolers danced to K-pop playing from a portable speaker, energetic, synchronized, and free. That night, I wrote in my journal, Busan is a song of contrasts, steel and sand, war and dance, sorrow and imagination. It does not forget its past, but it dares to dream louder. Tomorrow, I board the high-speed KTX train to Seoul, where ambition lights the skyline and the future walks faster than time. But tonight, I let Busan's ocean wind lull me into sleep. It's the kind of place that starts like a harbor and ends like a home. Day 7, Seoul. The city that wears tomorrow's 7 January 2030, Seoul, South Korea. The KTX Bullet train surged towards Seoul like a silver arrow through frost-kissed valleys. I sat by the window, watching the countryside slip by, villages with curved tiled roofs, snowy hills wrapped in silence, wind turbines turning like patient giants. The ride lasted just over 2 hours, yet it felt like moving decades ahead in time. When I arrived at Seoul Station, I stepped into a rhythm that was faster, brighter, and somehow choreographed. Seoul didn't walk, it flowed. This was no ordinary metropolis. It pulsed like a living organism, its veins filled with light, movement, and digital signals. Holographic signs danced above streets, and autonomous buses glided soundlessly by. I felt as though I had entered the set of a futuristic opera. My first visit was to Digital Twin Seoul, a command center where the entire city had been recreated virtually in real time. Engineers here could simulate earthquakes, traffic jams, even social behavior, all with startling precision. A young systems architect, Jisoo, showed me the interface. We use this to test future ideas, she explained. Not just technology, but human impact. Seoul is not only smart, it's self-aware. It was a strange realization. The city itself was learning, evolving. In the afternoon, I visited Gwanggwamun Square, a historic heart surrounded by high-rises. The statue of King Sejong stood proud, just a few steps away from a sleek underground museum that displayed Korea's contributions to modern AI, robotics, and biotechnology. Nearby, at the Samsung AI campus, I met a group of students designing AI companions for the elderly. These machines weren't just assistants, they learned family histories, remembered anniversaries, even wrote poems in the voice of a long-lost spouse. Sometimes, all someone needs is to feel remembered, one student said. Her words echoed deep within me. Yet Seoul was not only science and speed. That evening, I walked through the Bukcho Hanok village, where traditional houses still stood, wooden doors, curved tiled roofs, delicate lattice work. The past here wasn't erased. It was integrated like a quiet melody in a techno symphony. I had dinner at a family-run restaurant, seated on the floor beside a charcoal grill. The flavors, bulgogi, kimchi, seaweed soup, tasted like stories passed through generations. The grandmother who, on the place, told me, with a chuckle, even robots can't cook with love. As I returned to my hotel, I passed Cheonggicheon stream flowing gently beneath neon bridges. Couples sat quietly along the banks, watching lead koi fish flicker beneath the surface. I wrote in my journal, Seoul wears tomorrow like a tailored suit, but under the fabric, its heart still beats in lullabies. Tomorrow, I board a plane to Taipei, the island city of lanterns, mountains, and memory. But tonight, I rest in a place where history whispers from rooftops, and the future glows in your palm.